What's your expectations?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what my expectations were going into it. I'm probably like a lot of folks around the country. Feel like, learning on the fly in some ways. And I'll say this, I've learned more in the last year and a half than I did probably in the previous 10 combined, just with the change in landscape. And so there's been a level of excitement to that, I think, that has certainly given me some energy as we've progressed through the last 18 months or so. But it's been great. I think to be able to be a part of blessing the efforts and the work that a lot of our guys have put in has been a real positive and a real plus for me, and something I've really enjoyed. And the problem-solving aspect of it, and trying to piece the puzzle together and give ourselves the best possible opportunity to put a really competitive roster together year in and year out is one that I've enjoyed, and certainly don't take lightly the responsibility of that. But we've got a great team of people. It's certainly not just me sitting there doing it and trying to work in a silo. Like there's a lot of input and a lot of hands that are working towards the same goal as well. So from that standpoint, it's been a lot of fun.
Jordan, if somebody out there hears the term general manager, they probably think pro. How would you say you could relate your job, your responsibilities to, I know it's different, but similarities to what a professional general manager would look like at the NFL level?
Yeah, I think there's certainly some crossover and some things that are similar about it. There's also some stark differences, right? Like we don't get to select a roster. Sure. We don't draft. We don't necessarily sign in free agency in the same way that a pro team would. But yeah, there's definitely some similarities in terms of the evaluation process of it, and trying to fit the pieces together. And so I think, we're all NFL, college, we're all working towards the same mission, right? Of you've got to put a roster together. And ours is probably, especially at Clemson, we probably have a little bit more of a long-term mindset towards it, right? It's not just a year-to-year thing where you're trying to fill holes in free agency and get every piece in place, and you have contracts expiring, those kind of things. We've got some similarities there, but in terms of how we want to do it, it's a retention-first model. That's what we want to do. We want to retain and develop the roster, and so everything that we do is kind of goes through that lens, right? Of we want to sign the best class that we can sign every year to fill the holes that we know we have from a departure standpoint, and then ultimately, hand it over to the coaches and say, hey, here's who we've got. Here's who you guys wanted that we were able to bring in here. Now let's go develop them and let's go win on the field.
So how much say do the coaches have in the guys that you are looking at and acquiring?
Yeah, a ton. It's a collaborative effort all the way. But at the end of the day, we still have to recruit, right? We don't just get to select.
Sure.
And so from my standpoint, I think the coach's involvement is paramount to success, right? It's because you're still talking about 16, 17-year-old kids who are making decisions about the next 4 years of their life, which has a tremendous impact long-term on their future. And so the coaches have to be involved in the selection process, the recruiting process, the evaluation process. They've got to be intimately involved in all of that. It's critical, because ultimately their jobs are on the line too, right? And so I'm not in a situation where, hey, we're selecting and then telling them who they've got year to year. That's much more of the NFL model, right? But again, with the recruiting piece of it, that's, I think, the biggest difference between college and the NFL is we're still working in the relationship business in terms of the recruiting.
Rev shares here now. How much of a game changer is that for you as a program?
Yeah, I think it's been huge for us. It's huge for everybody, right? It's changed the game, to use your term, in ways that, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I started in college football, will we ever be there? I'd say, I doubt it, but here we are, and so yeah, it's changed the game tremendously. But we're hopeful that we're going to get some clarity and some more regulation, rules, structure. Those are decisions that are made at a really, really high level, and we'll see how it all plays out here over the next couple of years, because I do think we're going to have to drive the car for a little bit as we figure out the rules of the road, and we're hopeful that things are moving in a positive direction. But yeah, it's changed it tremendously, right? It's professionalized it in a lot of ways. It's certainly changed perspectives on decision making and those kind of things. But at the end of the day, I think what's important for us is we need to adapt, and I think we have adapted, but we don't need to compromise, right? And so in terms of philosophy and what's most important to us, those things still need to remain the same. And I think that's where we've been unique, and I think we're going to continue to be unique as long as Coach Schwinney is here and our staff is in place. We're still going to value the things that we've always valued at Clemson, but we've got to adapt along with the changes of college athletics. And that's been the fun part for me is, understanding and learning that we can still do it the Clemson way in a new era of college sports.
Do you think that the rev share has leveled the playing field somewhat for Clemson compared to the last couple of years where it's just been, a Wild West?
Yeah, I think we're in the process of that happening. I don't think we're probably not quite there yet, just because, again, I don't think we have all the answers to all the questions, right? I mean, I've got a laundry list of questions that I'd love to have answered just relative to how will this work, what can we do, what can't we do, and have some concrete answers on that we just don't have yet. But I think we're in the process of the playing field being leveled, but we're not there yet. We're hopeful that we'll get there, sooner than later.
With all these changes, what is maybe the one thing that the NCAA or whoever figured out? Okay, my job would be a lot easier if this was fixed tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think binding contracts are important, right? Like those are critical. That's a critical piece of the puzzle. That if we could figure that out, that would help. And then a salary cap, like those two things, those would be. That's probably highest on my wish list, that we would have that, right? And it wouldn't be a moving target, and you wouldn't have a lot of different philosophies across the country in terms of like, well, we think that collectives are going to operate this way, and they think collectives are going to operate that way. But for us, again, all to have the same set of rules, everybody have the same understanding of that set of rules, those would be critical pieces. But again, like those are hard questions to answer and hard problems to solve. It's not easy, and there's a lot of legal ramifications of all that. And so, again, I kind of defer to the ADs and the commissioners and all the folks that are involved in that process to answer those questions for us. But like I said, I'm hopeful, and I want to maintain hope that we're gonna get there.
How does that happen with so many different states and so many different rules? It doesn't seem like there's a centralized oversight committee.
That's not a question for me to answer. The how does it happen question, I don't know. That's again, I defer to the powers that be on that. It's a better question for Graham and Coach Schwinney, but yeah, I'm hopeful that it happens at some point.
But that would help do your job a little easier and make the challenges, I would think, a little less.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I mean, concrete rules and structure would help not just me, it would help everybody across the landscape to be able to, just again know the rules of the game that you're playing. And I think we're getting there, but it's gonna take some time before we all have a great understanding of how it's worked. I mean, we're July 15th. We're 2 weeks into the settlement, so we've certainly still got some runway ahead of us.
And do you have an opinion on this? What is your thought?
I got lots of opinions on a lot of things, but I think, at the end of the day, again, my opinions are not necessarily relevant today. I think what we're trying to do is take our philosophy and continue to be true to who we are, and with whatever rules of the day that we have, we go operate within those rules, and then let the powers that be make those decisions.
We talked a lot about retaining this roster. I'm curious if you talk to other GMs around the sport, and if they ask you, like, how are you guys at Clemson doing this every year where all your best players don't enter the portal, or at least half of them don't?
Yeah.
Like, what do you say, like, this is how we're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly that's been one of the benefits, I think, of the change and even the rise of the GM role. I think I've had more connectivity with my counterparts and peers across the country over the last few years than certainly I did previously, because I think, again, we're all trying to sort of solve the same problems. And so, yeah, I mean, we share as much as we can share, and I think that's something that's unique about college football in general. I can't speak for other sports, but there is a sharing of ideas across the sport, and that's not just in terms of my role, but that's coaches too, right? Like, coaches get together in clinic, and our coaches go and visit other staffs, and other staffs come here and visit and talk shop. So yeah, we do a lot of that conversationally, because I think, again, we're all experiencing the same issues. We're all kind of going through this together, and we're all learning as we go, because this is by no means a finished product. And so I think that's important for us to be able to share some of those ideas. and that's been a real positive for me. But you share what you can share, and I think people are naturally curious about Clemson because we are different and we do have a philosophy and a conviction in the way that we do things. And quite frankly, it takes some courage to do things the way that we do them. And I'm not naive enough to think that there's been a lot of people that have come before me who have put in a lot of work and blood, sweat, and tears over the years to get us to this point, right? To be able to operate the way that we do is a privilege. It's not a right, and it's earned over time. But Coach Schwinney has, I have a ton of respect, most of all for his conviction, and we're going to do things a certain way. And I think that's a hard thing to do, because I think today's world, especially for coaches, is most administrations and fan bases don't have a lot of patience, right? They want it now, and they want to be able to win now. And so I think we were blessed and lucky in the fact that we went through a lot of the building process before all the chaos hit. And so we've got a really established culture with a lot of great support from both our fan base and our administration that allows us to do things a certain way. And Coach has proven year in and year out that it works doing it the way we do it, and he's going to maintain that conviction, and I love that about him.
Touched on this a little bit thing on the podcast appearance, but so rev share is coming. The season ends, the Texas game. How quickly are you delving into roster discussions, retention, all these conversations, signing agreements, dealing with tampering, just that whole process? Take us through end of last season to kind of now with the roster.
We certainly spent a ton of time throughout the fall, kind of evaluating and determining, okay, how are we going to approach this? 1,000 different valuation models and things that we went through. I mean, we got iteration upon iteration of those models, and ultimately landed at where we felt was a good spot, and then the conversations start, right? And so you've got starting points and places that you want to land on all of that, and things change and evolve as you go through those conversations. And we started, sat on the bus after the game and kind of put the finishing touches on, all right, here's where we're going to start tomorrow, and got home at 3 a.m., got into bed for a few hours, and then, we had our first conversation at noon the next day. And, again, I think the opportunity to bless our players was a fun one. It really was. And I was struck by the fact that we didn't have many, if any, guys who were really just trying to leverage us to leave. They wanted to be here. We got a bunch of guys who are bought into the process. They're bought into the place. They're bought into the people, and they want to be here. And they have a great understanding of, the dollars are not unlimited. It's not a $275 million budget that we have. We're limited in what we can spend. And so, in order to make it work, we've all got to work together, right? It's not just we can't just focus on one guy. We got to make sure that every player has teammates around him that are going to push him to be better. Because one thing I know about this game is one guy does not win you a championship, right? It takes an entirety of a roster, and not just a starting 11. Like, you got to have a full roster of guys that can go out and compete. And so I think our players had a great understanding of we've all got to work together to make this happen. And I'm appreciative of the opportunity to go through the process with them. And those phone calls and conversations and FaceTimes where, hey, we're done, the deals are signed, those were celebratory, and that was a lot of fun. And again, have a great appreciation for our players, for their continued belief in us and their commitment to us to honor the commitments that they made when they signed. It's been a blessing.
Do you ever just take a step back and realize how crazy it is? Like, when you started, do you ever think you'd be discussing open salary negotiations with players 12 years later, or however long you've been in how much things have changed from when you started to now?
I've had that thought a number of times, and we've said that internally. I've said it to some peers and counterparts, do y'all ever just think to yourself, this is wild? And yeah, it is, but it's like a lot of things in life, right? Like, the one constant in life is change. Yeah. And so we're living through that now. And so, like I said, I think it has certainly reinvigorated in me just the desire and the hunger for learning and for knowledge, because I certainly don't have all the answers, right? And we don't have all the answers. And so having conversations and studying, and Kevin's been has been an amazing resource for me. Just his experience in evaluation, in information gathering and those kind of things, and I'm still learning every day. And we just had a conversation 20 minutes ago about how we're going to approach some things moving forward. And so he's been great, but he brought Bill Polian in, and we spent some time with Bill Polian and hearing Bill Polian's perspective. It's a Hall of Famer at the NFL level, and you're hearing his perspective on what's most important and where are the places where you can make some concessions and where are the places that you can't compromise this and that. Like, those have been great. So I'm thankful for a number of the NFL GMs that I've spoken to over the years who have been super gracious with their time, and it's been interesting because those conversations, I go in with a list of questions, and they have ones just as long. They're like, how do you guys do this? And, man, this is crazy. And I can't imagine dealing with that the way that y'all have to deal with it relative to how we do. So it's been a lot of fun.
I'm just curious, you and other GMs, like, how y'all feel like the policing thing should go. Because still feels like that today, nothing's stopping from one of the bigger programs that feels like they have an unlimited amount of money from still spending that money. What is the best way to go about making sure that it's real contracts through the school, nothing, off the books that's coming in?
Yeah.
How do you guys police that?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I don't have to answer that question. That's not a problem that I have to solve. I want to see it solved, certainly. But there's a lot of folks that are working on that. And again, like the legal ramifications are big, and that's where I think it gets really messy and it gets complicated because it's not an employment model, and so this is a kind of a first of its kind in terms of not just college athletics, but the world and the country. Like, we're trying to figure out how do you create structure within a model that's not an employment model, and those are big, messy problems.
How do you limit value?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to those questions. I certainly would love to see some regulation there, just because I think it cleans it up and simplifies it for everybody. But I'm hopeful that comes. But how I would do it, I've got my own personal
Is
thought.
there any belief from you and other GMs that this Deloitte stuff or a firm like that can work, or is it? I don't know if that's going to work. Is that the feeling that you guys have?
Yeah, I think there's probably all of those feelings. You've got both ends of the spectrum and everything in between, depending on who you talk to. Again, I'm hopeful that we're going to find a way to make it work at some point. But I think it's going to take some time as we work our way through this initial. Like with anything, when you start something, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And so we're learning that every single day. We're learning it. The folks at Deloitte and the CSE, they're learning it. Our ADs are learning it. And we're all going to work through it together and hopefully land at a spot that's manageable for all of us. Yeah, Kevin worked for Bill Polian in Indy for however many years he was there, a decade or so. And so Bill came in and spoke at one of our Paul Journey events to our players, draft prep, agent prep, one of those type events. And so we got to spend some time with Bill when he was here, which was awesome. I mean, it's not every day you get to sit in your office with a Hall of Famer who's saying, "I'm an open book, ask me anything you want." That was a pretty unique experience. Yeah, I think, having conviction in what you do, he certainly was that. But, again, I think a collaborative effort with the coaching staff on, especially, and it really resonated with me, having a new defensive coordinator in Tom Allin, who's bringing sort of a new philosophy, a new structure. For Bill saying, hey, I would always meet with the coaches and say, tell me exactly what you want, and then we're going to go out and help you find the players that meet that criteria. So working through that and talking through how he did that with multiple different staffs, head coaches, coordinators, those kind of things, that was pretty enlightening. Yeah, because we had a limited amount of time to do it, we're sort of up against the portal window there where you're trying to get ahead of that. So we reached out and started scheduling meetings. We sort of knew where we wanted to start in terms of, who the guys were that we needed to kind of figure out first. And then, we just started knocking them out. So, again, it wasn't me. I mean, Zach Fulmer was involved. Kendall Mercer was involved, or Kendall Thompson now. She was certainly involved in all that. Amanda Richardson in compliance. Graham and I talked multiple times a day, just in terms of, how's it going? What do you need? What can we do? Coach Sweeney and I were in lockstep on it. So it was a team effort. It certainly wasn't just, me trying to do it. I think it was as efficient as it could be, certainly in the first go round. But again, positive for the most part, conversations. And I think our guys have a good understanding of who we are, what we value. And, we've tried to recruit guys that align with our values too. And so that makes it easier. Yeah, it's not so dissimilar to the way that we've always done it in terms of your recruiting board, right? You kind of have a pecking order of, hey, if you get first choice, who are you taking? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then the value, that's a little more complicated in terms of how we land on that and how we determine it. There's market influences there. There's some position values, right? Like the quarterback obviously is going to command the most dollars, and so positionally there's positions that have different values, and so we've got a formula that we've kind of built and are continuing to tweak that gives us at least a starting point for those conversations. But yeah, again, like it's a team effort, like I said, of a lot of folks that have a lot of input in terms of to the value. So the need on the roster, what you have in the room, all those things make a difference in terms of where you ultimately land on those values. Yep. Yep.
How valuable that has to be, because obviously you guys are into the network yourselves as coaches on just giving guys any feedback, advice, like how to
Yeah, without a doubt. I just told somebody earlier, as recently as 30 minutes ago, we're having those conversations, about how we need to tweak some things moving forward, and what needs to happen, what is becoming increasingly important here in this new era, relative to some of the investigation of just character and who they are, because these are not small investments that the university is making, right? And so I don't take lightly the fact that our donor base, our university, our administration, we're making significant investments in these young people. And so, with any investment, there's risk that comes along with that. And I talk to our players about that, right? There's inherent risk with every investment. And so their job is to go make us right on the investment. So we make the investment because we believe that it's going to pay off. And their job is to go make us right on that. But they got to be made of the right stuff in order to make us right. And so it's important to us that, we do evaluate the character, we evaluate the fit, we evaluate, the families that they're coming from and the structure that they have around them, like we always have. But, it comes with probably a little bit more of a weight to it now than it ever has before, just simply because of the financial investment we're making too.
most valuable thing Kevin's involved. Obviously, NFL guy was raised scouting and all that. What's the most unique thing that he's going to want?
Yeah, I think, number one, just his comfort level with speaking the language of evaluation, I think has been critical. He's helped us, revamp our scouting process, and we're, that's, I think, going to be an ongoing process. But I think the thing I've appreciated most about him is his willingness just to say what he believes and speak his mind. He doesn't sugarcoat. He just says, when you ask him a question, what do you think about this guy? He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks, right? And I think that's an invaluable resource for us as a staff, to just be able to have a guy who you can really lean on, that has had 25 years plus of experience doing exactly what he's doing today for us. So I think, to me, that's been the greatest value that he's brought, is just his willingness to say, this is what I think, this is what I believe, and he's convicted in it. And I think that's given everybody across the building the confidence to probably speak up a little bit more too, which has been great.
Obviously, you guys talk about specific recruits, but you talked about the summer camp that you guys just had, and that's really popular. It's almost like a phone in.
Yep.
You guys to evaluate them in person. Is there a way that you can really help kind of identify certain prospects? Like, I really like that guy. Like, how helpful is it having his eyes there?
Yeah, I think it's great. The thing with camp is, your coaches are so engaged and they're working and coaching and moving around. And so to have another set of eyes that's strictly an evaluation set is a good one. And it's not lost on me, right, that you can introduce a prospect to Kevin and say, hey, this guy was a part of evaluating some Hall of Famers. Like, he's been doing this a long time at the NFL level for a number of organizations. But yeah, just to have him there, and again, have him walking around and be able to say, hey, did you see that route? What'd you think? Did you see that one-on-one rep? Like, give me your take on it. For me, it's invaluable, right? Because we're evaluating every single thing from a high school perspective in the camp setting, but we're doing that for our roster as well. And I've really enjoyed being able just to go get his feedback. And he's always ready with it. That's the thing, is that he retains information really well. And when he watches a guy, I can ask him some obscure guy, and he'll like, oh yeah, I watched that guy. Here's my thoughts on him. And he's an avid note taker, so like he's got notebooks on notebooks of evaluation notes on guys too. So he's been a great resource for us, and I'm extremely thankful he's here.
These playing days coming, do you ever, you're quite the player. Us being from Greenville, Furman is a big interest.
Yeah, you're kind.
Do you ever, recount those days and bring them up, or use them in relationship building and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you lean on the experience of it, certainly, right? Of the, hey, I've been in your shoes, I understand kind of what you're going through, and those kind of things from a recruiting perspective. But man, I'm a has-been at this point, so that was a long time ago. It did come up. We played Furman a couple of years ago. Somehow, they weren't my highlights, but we played Clemson back in, I don't know, 2006, 7, whatever the year was. Somehow both picks that I threw in that game made their way onto the video screen in our team meeting. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, they still come up from time to time.
And when you have those matchups with them, how do you separate the, because you're obviously rooting for Clemson, but you have that Furman connection. How do you separate that, or is it like we're all winners today? When the two teams
Yeah, there's no conflict for me. I mean, Clemson signs my paycheck. That's where the bread is buttered. So I want to win, no matter who's standing across that. My mom could be coaching the other team, and I want to make sure that we're coming out with a victory.
How about this new level of success, new role? Do you have a moment, or have you had a moment where you're like, wow, this is an appreciation or gratitude or reflection of the journey that you've taken together?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I want to, it's important to me not to take any of this for granted. The fact that I'm here, and most of all, the fact that I'm at Clemson. The place is unbelievable. The head coach that I work for aligns wholly with me, and I align with him, and just in terms of what's most important to me in my life, my faith, my family, the opportunity to be a husband and a father. But the people that I get to work with every day, like, I don't take that for granted at all. I've talked to enough people around the country. I know that the grass is really, really green right here in Clemson, and I'm super thankful for that. And so, I'm really blessed to be here. But yeah, I have a lot of pinch myself moments where I walk in and think, man, this is crazy. As a kid, a son of a football coach, and growing up around the game and being around it all my life, there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, the scale is much different, but what I grew up in and the culture that my dad was a part of at Furman as a kid, there are so many similarities to what we do today, just with the family structure and our families and kids being around, and kids running around at practice, and coaches addressing the team at the end of every practice, and there's kids running and screaming on the other side, and nobody bats an eye, right? It's like people that come here for the first time, they're like, we tell those kids to be quiet, like, oh no, they're good. So I'm really thankful for that. My 3 kids and my wife get to be a part of this with me, and that's I don't think I could do it if that wasn't the case.